Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am AA Ron, and this is the Inclusive Dad Podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me in exploring ways we can create a more inclusive world together. You are important, you matter, and you can make a difference. Today, my guest is Dan Watt. Welcome to the show.
Well, it's so nice to have you. I mean, so nice to have you. So nice that for you to have me on here. I follow you um, on some of the social medias, and I really appreciate what you do.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for reaching out. Why don't you just start off by just telling me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Dan Watt, and I'm an independent producer and director. And currently, I'm focusing on documentaries and stories that I think that need to be told. My most recent film, Everybody Dance, won an Emmy last year in 2024. And before that, I worked for 5 years at Columbia Pictures, and I worked in the film development department. And first movie I did, if you're old enough, if your audience is old enough to remember, was House Bunny with Anna Faris, and I did Just Go With It with Jennifer Aniston and Adam Sandler. And after 5 years there, I moved on and worked with Simon Cowell because he was going to do a documentary on the One Direction boy band. So I moved over to work with him on that and helping his company. And there I met the great Morgan Spurlock, who was the director of that show, who passed away last year, but was a huge mentor to me in getting my movie and business up and running.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for telling us a little. So you've been in the same room with Adam Sandler?
Yeah, often. Well, and
Awesome.
to his Christmas party.
Okay.
Every year he threw a Christmas party, and it was huge. I mean, absolutely huge. They tore it down like 2 years ago. I think COVID, it just couldn't
Okay.
survive. But it was like a complex, and he invited everybody and their families because he had kids. He wanted it to be a place
Sure.
for kids. So there was an ice skating rink, a bowling alley, and he
Oh, wow.
rented out the entire complex,
That's
and you
awesome.
just walked from building to building doing whatever it is you wanted to do, and then
That's
you'd
awesome.
go to the buffet, and it was chicken nuggets, french fries, and chili. Uh,
Wow. That's
and then
awesome.
he had another room where his friends like David Spade and
Yep.
all those people there, anybody who could say, they would just perform live, either comedy
Wow.
or a lot of them played instruments.
Yep.
So you're sitting there and there's Adam Sandler singing one of his Hanukkah song, and you're like,
Yep.
this is bizarre.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if he sang that during that party.
Yeah, yeah. But to see, so many of his friends play
That's awesome.
instruments and stuff, and they would just get up there. Oh, Kevin James, they would
Yep.
just get up there and jam, you
That's
know.
cool.
So
That's awesome. What is your definition of inclusion?
I think that it's valuing and respecting all people, like with a welcoming attitude, and recognizing that we all have strengths and differences, and we should provide everybody with the same opportunities.
Yeah, I love that. So maybe I'm always interested in like my story with disability is like I don't remember the word disability being spoken when growing up. I don't remember anybody in a wheelchair. So when my daughter was born, she's 22 now. So at 3 months, we found out she was having seizures, diagnosed with epilepsy, cerebral palsy. She uses a power wheelchair now. I didn't know anything about that world. Did you, growing up, did you have any experience with disability?
Well, actually, yeah. My cousin has Tourette syndrome,
Okay.
and when I was younger, it was great. And I think this is a lesson for everybody as parents. Um, is when we'd get together for dinner at my grandma's house, Biff would, you know, always play with his food, or moving his hands, couldn't always control his hands, and blurt out words and stuff like that. That my mom and dad took the time to talk to me about it, not in
Hmm.
detail because I was younger also, but for them to say, that's your cousin Biff. He's just like you and me. He just can't control his hands sometimes, or
Right.
you know, he might blurt out some words, but there's nothing wrong with them. So it was great that I was around it at an early age so that it didn't, it, it opened my eyes to something that there is no difference. We're still just two different people playing with our blocks, you know.
Yeah.
He just blurted out some words in between. So what?
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, you produced or you directed the Everybody Dance documentary, which I watched, and it was really moving. I mean, I there was a couple times of just watching like the parents and siblings talk about their children and how much impact like the dance studio had on them. Brought me to tears a couple times. It was very emotional. How did you? I guess I'm not sure how like you want to do a documentary. How did you find like Bonnie or the dance studio, or how did you figure out that was the documentary you wanted to make?
Well, it started out as a bigger idea because
Okay.
I started out as a dancer and a musical theater
Okay.
stage performer. So I've always been fascinated with people who studied the arts. Like, did your mom and dad make you take piano lessons for 5 years, but you never made it a profession? And
Sure.
it's always fascinated me is, what did you learn anything when you had to take piano or violin, or you had to be in the church choir? Did How did that help you in your everyday life now as
Sure.
an adult that you didn't realize, the benefits from it? That was my
Okay.
idea. um, and then I used, as I was a dancer, as I got older, I started teaching and choreographing. And I actually had a dream about two girls that I taught 18 years ago. I had a dream about Fran and her two daughters, and they had autism. Well, when I taught them, I didn't think anything about it. Fran just said, my daughters both have autism, and they know that they might not move up to jazz 2 as quick as some of the other kids, so they understand all that.
Hmm.
So we just want them to take the class to learn coordination and have fun and participate. And I'm like, okay. And the only thing she told me is the older one doesn't like to be touched. She's got a she's sensitive to sensory touch, so just show her if her arm isn't in the right place and don't physically correct it. I'm like, okay. So I just taught the class the way I normally did and never thought about it. So I had a dream about them, and I thought, well, that was weird, and I
Hmm.
didn't give it any more thought. I'm like, you know, but then 2 or 3 weeks later, I had a dream about them again. And I thought, I have to trust my gut.
Right.
To me, this is because I had the big picture of what I wanted to say, but I didn't know how I was going to tell the story. And when I had a dream about them again, I thought, this is my higher power, my God going, here's your movie. I'm
Hmm.
telling you, here, listen to me. This is your
Yep.
way in. So I was able to tell the story of how the arts are so beneficial to everybody, to people in general, but I
Hmm.
was able to tell it through the eyes of these kids and parents, and how they were able, or how they are able, to use the arts to benefit them and teach them things that they apply in their everyday life, which is the story that I wanted to tell. It
Right.
just happens to
Yeah.
be with kids with different disabilities. But
Yeah.
what makes Bonnie's studio, it's called Ballet for All Kids, different is at her studio, anyone can take dance.
Hmm.
So when you walk by the window, you don't know if a kid has a disability or not,
Right.
because everyone is welcome. And there are kids there, and you saw some of them in the film,
Yep.
the assistants. There are kids there that might, dance might be awkward. They don't quite get it.
Hmm.
Not everybody can, it's just like, me with soccer. I don't understand the penalties. It makes no sense. Why can't
Yeah.
he run a little further and kick the ball? I mean,
Yeah.
it makes no sense to me. So that could be the same thing for someone with dance. So they learn at a slower pace. It's a safer studio for people like that. So
Right.
I would say a third, or maybe a fourth of her students don't have a disability.
Right.
It's just a safe community to learn in.
Yeah. So how did you find Bonnie?
Well, I searched the country, and because I honest to God, and again, here's me coming up with a preconceived idea, which was
Right.
wrong, and an assumption. I thought, well, there isn't gonna be a studio in LA or Hollywood that does this, because all those kids are going to be studying to be in the next video, on the next award show, in the
Sure.
next movie. So I I researched Pennsylvania, Ohio, because I'm from Cleveland, Utah, Texas, universities, conservatories. I'm just looking for something that offers a program for kids with disabilities. And so many of them, like Parks and Rec departments and stuff like that, offer classes, but they weren't fully fleshed out. So, it came across more like it was a babysitting service for the parents. And that's absolutely okay, because you can go grocery shopping while your kids are being, but they might teach a little bit of dance for 10 minutes, and then they're, hopping around and throwing balls around the room and stuff like that. And I thought, there's got to be a studio. So I Googled in California, and I thought, I was going to swear, I better not. Okay. But I was like, shuckins. It's right up in the valley. It takes 2 hours to get there, but it's only 20 miles away. And I thought, I can't believe it, because I had a preconceived idea that there's nothing like this in Hollywood. And it was there. So I reached out to her and I said, this is my idea. But she also has, she has a board of directors. Bonnie also has a degree in psychology, which is why she knows how to teach the classes so well. And she presented it to the board and then some of the parents. And I had quite a few meetings with them, because we wanted to make sure that I presented the story right. And then I met some of the parents, and they liked me, and then they gave their trust to me, and we started filming. Yeah, I was lucky, actually. I had gone up there on a Saturday, and I think it was like our third chat, and she goes, well, I'm going to do a recital. And I'm like, oh, have you made the announcement yet? And she said, no, I'm going to do it next Saturday. So I was like, oh my God, I have to get a crew together for next Saturday. So what was great is we got to follow these kids from when she made the announcement that, we're going to do this on stage in front of people. And some of the kids were like, I'm sorry, what? And some loved it, all the way through the recital. So we get a whole 10-month journey with these kids and families, at home and at the studio.
It was, like, how I was watching it, how do you, because I don't think I ever saw like a camera or a glimpse of a camera. How do you always or film that much stuff and not, have the camera off? I guess you must just have to be aware of where you're at and stuff.
Well, the first thing, the reason I brought up Morgan Spurlock is I called him and I said, this is my idea. And he said, Dan, you're the perfect person to make this movie. He said, remember, you were a dancer yourself, so what the kid's life. He said you were a choreographer, so that aspect. You were a producer of musicals for high schools and stuff, and recitals, so what goes on off stage and backstage. And in the rehearsal studio, he said, you've lived this life in every aspect of it. So he said, you're the perfect person to film this, because how many directors have that experience, that they've lived every part of this movie themselves? So that made it, and him, giving me his blessing, made it easier. But I also came from Columbia Pictures and Simon Cowell. So I'm used to things being very, very big and over the top. So the first day I went, this is going to be fabulous. And I'm taking 3 cameras and we're going to get every angle. And, I have my sound people and the boom mic and all that stuff. And we go into the studio and set up, and the kids come in, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, look, a jungle gym. Well, no, that's a tripod with a camera on it. And it has nothing to do with the kids having a disability. It's a 6-year-old going, I'm going to climb on that. That looks fun. And they all wanted to pet the caterpillar, the boom mic with the fuzz on it. So I had like 4 minutes to make a decision, and I made my entire crew leave. And we just went out in the parking lot, and I thought, how am I going to do this? And I said, okay, to my DP, Ben, the head head photographer, I said, we're going to do it the old fashioned way. Just put it on your shoulder. It's called run and gun. You just film it,
Mm-hmm.
So we then just became a fly on the wall. And I promised the parents this. I said, I'm not going to interrupt your dance class.
Right.
You're paying for your kid to take dance, and they need to learn dance, and they need to learn the choreography for the recital. So I need to just be capturing that and out of the way.
Right.
So Ben just had a camera on his shoulder, and then he had the freedom to move. We then switched to a lavalier mic for Bonnie, and he put a mic on his camera.
Mm-hmm.
And in the bigger scenes, like when we were at the theater at
Yep.
towards the end, I had 8 cameras. So they were 8 different cameramen, because I didn't want to lose anything. I didn't want to lose the kids backstage when all of a sudden they can't find their ballet slipper. Right. And the panic that goes on there, or they're fine. Yes, they're all excited to go on dance until it's time to walk on stage. And then they're like, oh no, but that happens with everybody. Again, it has nothing to do with the disability. Right. These are just kids or even adults. I mean, my sister can't stand talking in front of people, and her voice goes up 9 octaves. She squeaks like a mouse. Sorry, Deb. So my cameramen all did the same thing, had one on their shoulder, and they all just worked within the parameters of being off stage in the audience with the parents, in the lobby. And I just ran from camera to camera to make sure they were capturing stuff that I thought would work in the movie, so, but it was interesting how I went in with the mindset of, a Jennifer Aniston movie with all these cameras, and it's going to be glorious, and you have to get it from the left and the right, and then the view shot of her, and I'm like, oh hell no, just put it on your shoulder and run. We can't do it the other way.
The other thing I was thinking is, like, how do you get, when you're filming like that, how do you get people to just like naturally do what they were going to do anyway and not like focus on you?
Well, before we started filming, I had sat in on the classes for 3 weeks.
Okay.
Once the parents and the board of directors were okay with it, and to get them used to me. Right. So then there was just that guy sitting in the back who's always been there, and they would wave to me, and some would say, hi, Mr. Dan, and some would say, why are you here? Like anybody, who is that man and why is he looking at me? Right. And then the same thing, we brought Ben up 1 week before. We were up there every weekend, so he came up on a Saturday and just sat there with his camera so that the kids before and after class could look at his camera and talk to us in the lobby, so that they felt more comfortable. And again, we were there for 10 months every weekend. So I would say by week 4, they would, they all loved Ben. They would come in and, want to give him a big hug and all that kind of stuff. And there was 1 week I had to bring in a different cameraman because Ben was out of town, and everybody was like, where's Ben? Where's Ben? Where's Ben?
Yeah, that is interesting, because like when you're watching, it's like, I think it's like an hour and 20 minutes or something like that. So, I mean, my brain's like, you just go in there, film it, and that's what it is. But like, how many hours of like recorded stuff did you have to like come up with that hour and 20 minutes worth?
Well, because the parents were so gracious, because I wanted to let them tell, my goal was to let them tell, the kids and the parents to tell their stories in their words, because I thought I can learn from this. And if if my movie can be a learning tool for other people, I wanted to approach it that way. So the parents let us come into the house too. So there were times we went to the house at 5 a.m. because the mom is doing laundry. I mean, we didn't put that in the film. It didn't need to be there to move the story forward, but what are parents' lives like when you have, and this was the mom who the son Liam is in it, so they're both in the film. So we'll get there at 5 a.m. and she's doing all her laundry because she needs to get that done before the kids wake up before they have to take them to
Yeah.
school and, lunches. But that's like any parent,
Yeah.
when do you, okay, well, the kids are getting up, we have to give them breakfast and, get our
Yeah.
calendars together. And okay, are you picking them up from soccer, or are you taking them from school to dance and all that kind of stuff? So, and going out to eat with them, just to see how their life
Right.
functions, you
Yeah.
know. So I would say we had about 140 hours of film,
Wow.
and then I had to, I narrowed it down to 12 kids that I liked,
Sure.
that I thought on film they told the story, you
Yeah.
know. But Liam, there's a boy studying dance, and I was partial to that because I was a
Yeah.
guy, and how many guys are in dance? But I said, you know what, I can't. I had to find, my editor had to choose. He narrowed it down to 7, and then we narrowed it down to 5. I said, because I'm going to want to feature them all, and you have to tell me on film, because he never came to the studio.
Right.
I was in love with all of them now. Well,
Right.
okay, well, now it's an ABC miniseries if we do
Yeah.
it my way.
Yeah.
And so since he didn't meet any of the kids, he could look at it with an objective eye,
Right.
and he could say, okay, Liam does have a great story. You have enough footage to tell a great story here.
Yeah.
And Ailey, the girl with the little afro puff, who is absolutely adorable.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I just talked to her and her mom last week, I think, or the
Okay.
week before. So it was just what stories in the film, what has the best in
Yeah.
overall story? Because, like, again, like anyone, there were some kids that were gung-ho, and we started an interview, and once you turn the camera on, people get camera shy. And then it's like, do you like ballet? Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. What do you think of Bonnie? Love her? Okay.
Right. Right.
So, but people get camera shy all the time,
Yeah.
and again, it has nothing to do with a disability. It's just all of a sudden they're like,
Right.
are people watching me?
Yeah.
So
I mean, Liam, he had, I'm not going to get the words exactly correctly, but there was a scene when he's sitting there with his mom, I think in their house, like eating popcorn or something,
yep.
but he tells her like, that's like the only place I feel like I belong or something to that effect.
Yeah,
Or
he
something
said he
like that.
doesn't.
So,
He said he doesn't think he fits in at school,
yeah.
but at the ballet studio, he does.
Yes.
Well, that was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That's the crying moment.
Yep.
A funny story, and again, this is one of the things that I learned, that but we couldn't figure out how to tell it in the film. But one thing that I learned, that it's expanded my knowledge of in this case autism, the popcorn. They're they were working with him on achieving new goals and doing new things, and they love popcorn, but he could put the popcorn bag in the microwave, but for some reason he couldn't press the button, and he couldn't explain why.
Mhm.
And his mom and dad are two of my most favorite people, but he just couldn't do it.
Mhm.
And you can't ask it. I mean, he doesn't have the words for it, or he can't formulate the words at that moment on why he couldn't. So they would just do it, and the mom would pop the popcorn, and that was fine. And then he'd put it in the next day. Well, the day that we filmed was the day that he pressed the button.
Wow.
So he made us 8 bags of popcorn. He just wanted to keep doing it. So my crew were all like, "Oh my god!" Like, here's
That's
another
funny.
bag.
That's funny.
But it's interesting because
Yeah.
it's things like that no one has ever told me.
Right.
I have never seen it or experienced it in my life. So it's something like that where you go, "Oh, I never thought of that."
Right.
And okay,
Yeah.
and then the next step was, he his mom Jamie wants to get him to he also had trouble opening the refrigerator, and she said, think of it that think of my morning now. I'm up getting ready for work because I got them up, and he wants another juice bottle with his breakfast, but he can't open the refrigerator.
Mhm.
So I have to come
To go.
downstairs now
Yep.
and open the refrigerator to get it. And I thought, wow, these are just little things that we take for granted,
Yes.
that for whatever reason, they need to work on it a little harder
Yep.
than some people.
Yeah.
So then it was him opening the refrigerator and standing there, and he would touch the handle, and then,
Hmm.
and sooner or later he opened it. Okay, well
Yeah.
then he's now learned that task.
Right.
We'll move on to another one. So
Yeah.
it's things like that that I was exposed to, and I
Hmm.
learned so much being with these families, and I'm humbled and honored that they trusted me with their stories. But
Yeah.
it also was such a learning experience, and now I have these amazing friends,
Yeah.
because of it. But it's things like that do your kids, have any quirks like that you just, that we just take for granted?
What kind of reaction did you get from like the families, parents after they watched it for the first time?
Well, we were very, very lucky because COVID hit.
Okay.
So I had to I decided and convinced my distributor not to release it because no one could go to the movies.
Yeah.
And all those platforms, Netflix, I mean, Netflix was there, but seeing everybody was having their own platform, but they were
Right.
all just starting, so nothing was ironed out. Nobody knew what they were doing. And I
Hmm.
thought, my movie will get lost. And I said, I think my movie has a great message, and I don't want it to get lost. So we had to wait a year.
Okay.
Well, the Santa Barbara Film Festival, and I live in California, was the first film festival to open up and have a live audience again. Well, the
Okay.
film got accepted there. So it was great because the parents and kids, actually, because Santa Barbara is about an hour and a half away from where most of them live, were all able to go up there and see it on the big
Awesome.
screen.
That's
So
awesome.
it was, and you could hear like I remember the one girl, Charlie, who had the blonde hair,
Yep.
and her mom is talking. She goes, "Mommy, your head is so big."
Yeah.
Because it was but it was so great because they got to see it in a real theater
Right.
with an audience. We got a standing ovation. We did a Q&A afterwards, and I brought up Sarah from the movie, the
Yep.
older girl, and she answered some questions with me. So
Hmm.
it was a great experience, and I was glad, then you can say I was kind of glad COVID hit, because it was so cool to be able to have everyone that
Right.
wanted to come able to see it in a place like that, and have an audience applaud for them, appreciate them, ask them questions afterwards. The lobby, they actually had to ask us to leave because so many of the audience members were talking to the kids,
Oh.
and the parents in the lobby, and they're like, "We have another movie starting. Yours is over. Can you
Right.
move your party somewhere
Yep.
else?" And I'm like, "Oh, maybe just show mine again. It seems to be quite popular."
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we
Yeah.
went to, so I live in Minnesota. We drove like 3 hours to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. They had a film festival with all films disability related. So that was
Mhm.
my first like film festival. That was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Seeing all the different films, different perspectives. That was enjoyable.
Yeah, and again, they're a great learning tool, and it's trying
Yeah.
to, and also you get to see the similarities, and that's what I
Right.
think people forget. And if you focus on the similarities, there's one thing that I'm torn with, and you have kids with autism, so maybe you can be a teachable moment now. Everybody always says, and it's actually said in my movie, is if you meet one person with autism,
Yeah.
you've met one person with autism.
Right.
Okay, I understand that, but why not make that even bigger? Why not say that if you meet one person, you've met that person?
Right.
All of us,
Yeah.
all of us have our own personalities and our own uniquenesses,
Yes. Yep.
and we're all individuals. So I think of life that way.
Right.
So I don't know why they're like, well, if you meet one kid with autism, you've met one kid with autism. And I understand that it
Yeah.
shows that there's a spectrum.
Yep.
But isn't life aren't humans, quote, a spectrum?
Right.
Your personality is different than somebody else's. So it's interesting, that saying, because I just think it needs to be broader than that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, for sure. Because mean, for me, it's like all the labels. So, like my daughter, she has cerebral palsy, epilepsy. She needs those labels to like access services. But then what happens, I think, like in the case also with autism, is like somebody hears that word cerebral palsy, epilepsy, autism, and they might know one person with that. So then they hear epilepsy. Well, I knew Susie who had had seizures. Hers looked
Mhm.
like this. So then they assume like my daughters are the same, but they're not. So I think that's kind of where it's coming from. But I agree with you. Like, yeah, we're all. I mean, none of us are the same. We're all
Right.
individuals. So I mean, I see that approach also for sure.
Well, and the thing is, trying to not make assumptions
Yes.
as we go through life.
Yep.
I made the assumption that there wouldn't be a studio like this in
Yep.
in Hollywood. That
Right.
so we all do it.
For
And
sure.
there was one. I'll tell you one story where I noticed a change in my
Yeah.
brain.
Sure.
Is that it was in December, so we had been filming for 3 or 4 months, and uh, I went to shopping to get some stocking stuffers, and I'm going through down the aisle, and there was a girl having, a little conniption laying on the floor. And as I walked by, I thought, I wonder if she's on the spectrum. And I just kept shopping. I didn't think, what a horrible mother. Why isn't she
Right.
handling this?
Yeah.
I didn't think, what a bratty kid. Why
Yeah.
that girl didn't get my mind said, oh, I wonder if she's on the spectrum. And I just kept shopping because I don't know their stories.
Right.
So to be able for my brain to naturally erase those other thoughts and on judging them,
Right.
a switch had flipped in my brain, and
Yeah.
it opened me up to a wider perspective. And I got in the car and I started to cry, and I thought, I need to make sure, or try my best, for my movie to offer, hopefully someone will walk away from my movie
For sure.
with a lesson like that, you
Yeah.
know so
Yeah. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of really great moments in it. I mean, I love that you talked a little bit, or Bonnie, in part of it, she like describes about the sensory thing with like clothing, like how for me, or like you and I probably, like, I mean, I can, even talking about it now, I can feel like my shirt's on me, but
right,
it's
yeah,
not enough like sensation to like bug me, and my brain's able to just kind of silence it. Whereas, somebody with autism might not be able to do that. I'd never heard that kind of explanation before.
hmm
So I mean, that was a good moment. But just for me, like the big ones, like I have a daughter with a disability. So, the families talking about the impact, the kids talking about the impact. I mean, I also like the volunteers who are there helping. Where I don't remember the guy's name, but he was a guy who had helped for like 4 years. Started off, I
oh
think,
yeah,
just
Noah,
like filling his volunteer hours or community service
right,
hours he needed, but then he just kept coming back, and that's pretty cool too. All the helpers that are there, because I was watching
yeah,
with my partner, and I'm like, man, there's a lot of people there. There's a lot of people helping there too, which is cool.
right. Well, and again, it's with anything. I think, me being a dance teacher, we everybody learns different
Right.
in all
Yep.
aspects of life. And when I taught the way my teacher taught me. So
Yep.
that's why teachers are so valuable,
Right.
um, and so underrated. My teacher, whenever she would teach dance, would say, okay, the step is left, right, left, right, left, right. Or
Okay.
she'd say it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Right.
Okay, it's backside, side, backside, side. So she would offer in her explanation 3 or 4 different ways, because it the 1, 2, 3 might work for me, but it's
Right.
the left, right, left that might work for you.
Yep.
And when I taught, I also then added noises, because I would teach ba da ba ba.
Sure.
I would go with the rhythm, because you never know what is going to make you understand it.
Right.
And I think that if we approach approached that way. It's our job to find a way in. It's our job to
Yep.
find out as teachers
Yep.
in any area, math, science, and for me, because it was what I did, dance. It's my job to teach you how to learn this step.
Yeah.
So is it left, right, left? Is it right, left, right? Is it 1, 2, 3? You know, what is it
Right.
that is it ba-da-ba-ba? You have to learn the words. And then as you sing the song, you know what steps to do. It's our job to figure out the best way in for a child to learn in any area. But Bonnie is brilliant, brilliant at doing that with these kids, and that comes because of her studies and in her degrees.
Yeah, for sure. What is one tip you can share to help the listeners be more inclusive today? So just something anybody can start doing today to be more inclusive.
I think the big thing is just focus on the similarities. This movie, these kids came together to focus and learn choreography and dances and put on a show, and everybody just focused on accomplishing that. They learned the steps, and if we all come together, we all have obstacles in our lives, no matter what they are. But if we all come together, we can learn to dance separately, but also dance together.
Yeah.
So it's just working as a community and as a family.
Yeah. That's great. Is there anything you want to talk about that we haven't discussed?
Well, Rosie O'Donnell, who used to have the talk show, the comedian actress, she saw my film and she reached out, and her child Clay has autism.
Okay.
And I am now working on a project with her. I won't go into too much detail about what it's about, but it's
cool.
It's another fascinating side of how the arts and working together can help kids, can open kids' minds, and they can explore different things that they never would have thought about.
Wow.
So
awesome.
yeah, so
I look forward to seeing that when that comes out.
Yeah, you win an Emmy and you get a text from Rosie O'Donnell. It's weird.
How was the experience getting the Emmy?
Well, first, I honest to God didn't believe it. So now I have to believe the people who say that when you watch the TV shows, because I was up against a documentary that was about books being pulled from schools. Okay. And I thought, that's so current last year. I mean, they were doing it. They were banning books. And I thought, that's going to win because that's so current. But I scored higher. The people liked my story better. And it was a full circle moment. And it just kind of humbled me and made me realize that I did the right thing, that this was the right movie, and to keep pushing forward and getting the word out there, because March is Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month.
Yep.
And Amazon Prime is offering the film for free in support of that. So that's great for your listeners. They can see it there, and also on Tubi for free.
Yep.
And they can get it on Apple TV, but you have to pay there. So go to Prime or Tubi.
Yeah. So did you get your Emmy on the big huge show that's on there televised? I mean, do you get it during that same ceremony, or is a different
the
time?
Creative ones,
okay,
unfortunately are a few weeks before on a much smaller stage.
Okay. That's what I was wondering. Okay.
Yeah.
That's still pretty cool though.
Yeah.
Where's the best place if somebody wants to connect with you? Where's the best place to connect with you?
On Instagram, I'm Dancin Dan W. It's DANCIN DANW. Well, that's actually all the platforms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll make sure I put that in the show notes. You ready for the last question?
Uh-oh.
Do you like Spam lunch meat? Yes or no?
Oh, I'm from Ohio, of course.
Yeah.
Pan fried with tomato soup.
Yeah. Pan fried with tomato soup. I've never heard of it that way.
Well, the soup on the side, not.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
So yeah, I live in Austin, Minnesota, where they make spam and where the spam museum is located. So I ask all my guests if they like spam. It's
Oh,
kind of fun.
100%.
Yeah. So if you ever want to see the spam museum, you got to come to Austin,
Oh,
Minnesota.
a museum.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw in January they said they had 100,000 people, over 100,000 people come to the museum, and Austin has like 25,000 ish people, so that's a lot of people coming.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a restaurant attached to this museum? There should
There
be.
is not. No, there is not a restaurant attached to it. There are. There's a barbecue place across the street. I think there are some places in town that do serve some spam.
Well, they better. That's a huge mistake if not,
Yeah. And if you go to the spam museum, there are people walking around with like a tray. They have spamples, they call them, like little chunks of
Oh, I
spam
love
with a
that.
pretzel stuck in it that you can try different flavors and stuff. But yeah. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
I'm a traditionalist. I like it just normal,
Just normal. Yeah.
just spam. I don't need it flavored with barbecue sauce or
Yep.
anything like that. Just give me spam.
There you go. Yeah, when they opened it originally, Tom Brokaw was in town for like the grand opening. It was about the time when he had his like greatest generation book or something, I think. So he came to town and did a speech and stuff. So yeah, it's kind
How
of a big
cool.
deal. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate
Absolutely.
your stories. So keep it up. Thank you.
Thanks. To those listening, thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. It is truly an honor. Please join the podcast newsletter by clicking on the link in the episode description to keep up with the latest episodes. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.